Hey guys, thanks for checking out my video. People have asked me for a long time about hardcore Frostblades and whether or not it's viable. Can it be done? It can. The answer is yes. I have been playing it in hardcore SSF for the past month or so, and it has exceeded all my expectations on Trickster, Frostblades Trickster, not Warden. Okay, I don't recommend Warden for hardcore. So here it is, the build guide for hardcore SSF viable. You don't have to play in SSF, obviously, but let's get into it. Here's what we're going to cover in the video. I'm going to show you a mapping showcase and a bossing showcase from my current character. Talk about the passive tree and some of the options for it. Gem links, gear, and some options for gear. I'm going to go over flasks, pantheons, ailments, and how to deal with them or not deal with them. How to accuracy cap, all the defensive layers that you need. Important milestones for the build as you're progressing. Some tips about leveling and how to level. I'm going to talk about Trinity and the whole setup there. Resistances, VLS, and using Lightning Strike for single target as an option. Endurance charges. All this other stuff here. Some other additional information. Here's what we're going to go over. So first, mapping showcase. Here is a... This is pre-recorded. This is a tier 16 strand destructive play map. And I apologize for the low quality of this footage. I can't really figure out how to record gameplay with high quality for some reason. I'm scuffed at this. Okay, this isn't my full-time gig. All right, so give me a break. But as you can see, the gameplay is just like in softcore. It's very fast. It's snappy. The full screen freezing clear is just amazing. You move around quick. I use Enduring Cry to generate endurance charges. So while you're mapping, you have to just press. I didn't even do it in this map because in mapping, it's like my character's so ridiculously strong that I don't even bother doing it in mapping half the time. But when you're next to a rare or something, you can just press Enduring Cry. The charges will last for 30 seconds, and in a map like this, you only have to do it like one time. And there's the bosses. Bam, they're deleted. So there you go. The entire map in about 1 minute. You can do maps even faster than this, depending on like how much you juice them, and etc. So the map clear is great. So here is a bossing showcase. This is going to be the final phase of Cirrus. This is regular Cirrus. Okay, I haven't done any Ubers yet, but I am going to try them soon. Final phase of regular Cirrus here. And this is with Lightning Strike. Okay, I am going to use Lightning Strike for bossing. I'll talk more about that a little later, about why that is. But it can be freely swapped in. And there you go, Cirrus dead. And then here's the final phase of Shaper. And you can see he gets deleted real quick. And that's also of note is that I hit a 50% shock here that you can see. And this is without yoke. This is just with the lightning damage that I have on the build. I don't have yoke or, any kind of like particular emphasis on shocking, really. But as you can see, the boss damage is pretty good. Clear is pretty good. Overall, I think the build is just awesome. So passive tree, here it is. I'm going to show you it in POB. I'm going to show a lot of things in POB on this. This is my level 100 character with a cluster jewel here. This is the passive tree. Cluster jewel that I went for is one with attributes, and I'll talk a little more about why that is later. But cluster jewel here, suppression. This is a life hybrid build, not a CI build. So we've got life here, life here, life here, here, and then life and energy shield here. Got energy shield here. And lethal pride. I did find a light of meaning ES jewel, which I got extremely lucky on. So I have that there. And then pretty straightforward tree. It's pretty similar to the old tricksters I used to build, except with ghost dance and the evasion stuff added in. And that's the major differences from the old builds. You can see I have about 19 million damage, and it can get a little bit better than that too. I don't even think I have Awakened Added Cold in here. If I had Awakened Added Cold instead of Ice Bite, we'll be pushing around 20 million damage. And for the Ascendancies, I'll go Polymath, Swift Killer, and then Spellbreaker. I think Spellbreaker is incredibly powerful. I'll talk a little bit more about this later and like what the Ascendancy progression, what I did for it. There's some flexibility there though. And in the POB, which will be linked in the description, I have some other trees here going all the way down to Act 1. So Act 1 to 2, and then level 30, level 50, level 70, and then 85, 90, 95 with no additional strikes, and then with additional strikes, and then finally the cluster jewel tree, which should be like your final version of the build, is the cluster jewel. So you can come through and look at these different trees and how to progress through them. Gems. I'll talk about the gems now. So I use Steel Skin. You can also use Immortal Call. I'm using Steel Skin because I'm not CI, and Immortal Call doesn't do anything against chaos damage, so I decided to use Steel Skin instead. I probably will use Immortal Call when I do certain Uber fights and stuff. They're pretty much interchangeable. You can use whichever one you prefer. And then Whirling Blades, faster attacks. And then Enduring Cry with Urgent Orders. This is to generate your endurance charges. And then Herald of Ice and Wrath. And then the last aura is Flesh and Stone, which I have right here. Flesh and Stone is a slightly better defensive buff than Discipline is, because it gives you just less damage taken. It's like having an extra fortify layer, basically. Discipline does give you more energy shield, but it's still not as good as Flesh and Stone. Assassin's Mark, mark on hit, life tap setup. For the main links, Trinity, Nightblade, Ice Bite, Multi-Strike, Energy Leech. Ice Bite, I'm going to switch for Awakened Added Cold, which is better. But until you have that, or if you don't have that, you can just use Ice Bite. It's also a very good gem. And then Frost Blink, Frost Bomb with Bone Chill. And then I use a VLS setup. When I'm using Frost Blades, I use VLS with Returning Proj and Rage. This is basically a Rage Bomb that helps with single target, and it helps generate Rage really quickly. I have Rage on hit on my Lethal Pride. One node right here. Or no. I thought it was right there. Right here. Rage on hit there. And so if you just rely on this, it takes a long time to ramp that Rage up. So I use VLS with Rage to get the Rage generated much more quickly. And then because of the Lethal Pride, you can sustain it and keep the Rage up. And so that's a very helpful sort of DPS bomb. Helps with clearing too in like high density maps, or to clear up straggling trash in maps. It's very just quality of life setup here. But this is totally flexible. You don't have to use this. You can use Frost Shield here instead, or whatever other gems you might want to use. And that's it for the gem setup. Gear options. Okay, I'm going to show you guys my gear. My gear is very, very good. I have a claw with triple LE prefixes, and the way I made this was with recombinating the triple LE prefixes, and then I did Harvest Reforge Speed, and then once I had the tier 1 attack speed, you do Prefixes Can't Be Changed, Veiled Orb, and then you look to unveil Crit, Chance, Crit Multi, or Double Damage. If you unveil any of those three, it's a success, and then Craft on Crit if you don't hit the crit. Craft on Crit Multi if you hit the crit chance like I did. With the attack speed rune enchant. Claw's very good. Helmet is double ES with life prefixes. You could also go for a triple ES prefix helmet, which would probably be a little bit better, but I just settled with this one. And then tier 1 int and tier 1 accuracy. You do need to have accuracy either on your gloves or your helmet. I'll talk about that more later. I put the suppress there because the 6% was all I needed because I have 22 on my chest. The amulet I made is life and energy shield with double crit and int suffixes. This worked out perfectly for me, mostly because I got attributes on my cluster jewel. If you don't have a cluster jewel with attributes, you're going to need to get attributes from your amulet. So keep that in mind. The other amulet I was using before was this one right here, with just attributes, ES, and that's about it, pretty much. I was using this one for a long time until I found the Fury Valve. Fury Valve is also what I use all the time, basically, when I'm not doing any bossing. Fury Valve is absolutely unbelievable for mapping. So if you're not mapping and you can get yourself a Fury Valve, use that. And I intentionally did not get any resists on my amulet, or like extra attributes like dexterity. I have int on there just because it gives me lots of energy shield. You can see the difference between Fury Valve and this amulet is about 700 energy shield and 300 life. It's about 1,000 HP for this amulet. But yeah, try to keep this in mind if you get a Fury Valve. Don't get reliant on the resists, especially if you're going to swap it in and out for bossing. The shield is attack speed int, and then life and flat defenses, and then I Redeemer slammed the LE damage, which is guaranteed on a prefix because there's only one mod there. The way I made this was with recombinators. I just recombinated attack speed and int with life and flat defenses. And then once I had those 4 mods, you just craft the suffix and then Redeemer Slam and the shield's done. It's very easy craft. This ring I made just yesterday. I got pretty lucky with recombinating here and pretty lucky with my Crusader Slam. So I recombinated the suffixes with the life, and once I had all 4 of those mods, I just Crusader Slammed, and I got lucky and I hit the energy shield. And that's a pretty insane ring. The ring I had before was this one right here, which is basically the same thing except without the Crusader mod. Int Chaos Res with life and whatever prefixes you can get is what you're going to want to go for. I kept this one for a long time because I filled the prefixes when I did Reforge Life. The way I made this one was I just recombinated the suffixes only, and then I did Reforge Life. And when I did that, those are the prefixes I got. And so I kept this ring for a long time, and it worked really, really good. But now my ring is perfect. Chest is perfect. I recombinated this. Triple T1 defense prefixes with tier 1 int and suppress. That 22 suppression gives me the flexibility to just have the crafted suppress on my helmet, and I'm exactly at 100% suppress cap. If you don't have that, you're going to have to roll an actual suppress roll somewhere else probably to suppress cap. So that's pretty important. Taming is just an insanely strong ring for damage and capping your resists. I have damage catalysts on this, but because I have a perfect 30 resist roll, you can use prismatic catalysts instead. That'll give you even more resist flexibility. For gloves, I got the pierce and +2 strikes, attack speed int res suffixes with tier 1 life and flat with crafted damage. And the way I made these was I actually used the harvest bench to make these, and I was doing cold reforge. Oh, my phone's ringing. I'm gonna ignore it. I reforged cold until I hit the int, and you can reforge fire or lightning or whatever until you hit the int, and then I did a speed reforge to get the attack speed. And unfortunately, I tried a bunch of times, and the best I could get was tier 3 attack speed. So I decided to just keep it because I was out of currency. And then I did a reforge life to hit the life, and then I exalt slammed on the flat, which turned out to be okay. And then damage craft, and then orb of conflict up to +2 strikes, obviously, which I have a video about that on my channel you can find if you want to learn how to craft gloves like these. The belt is triple res suffixes with life, and I recombinated those, and then I Redeemer Slammed on the damage with hits against chilled enemies. So belt is extremely good. The Abyss Jewel I have is with accuracy. The way I'm accuracy capping is with the accuracy roll on the helmet plus the 1 accuracy jewel here. So that's primarily what I'm getting out of this, and the fire res. I do need the fire res from this. Without that, I would not be fire res capped. So that's what the jewel is for. And then the boots are int res, and the way I made these was, I don't remember if I used recombinators or if I used the harvest bench to make these, but pretty easy. I don't have ailment immunity, which I'll talk more about later. If I had a ailment immune jewel, Storm Shroud or Ancestral Vision, I would need to redo these boots, and instead of the int, I would have to have avoid ailments or avoid shock, depending on which jewel I had. But the boots are pretty good. And that's it for the gear. You can basically work your way up toward this gear. The build will function, without the perfect gear like this. Most of my gear is pretty much perfect, but you can give up the int like on every piece pretty much. Like adding the int was what made this gear perfect for the most part. And then just get the rest of the stuff. Make sure you're res capped. Get the attack speed here and here, and get as much defenses as you can out of your chest and helmet, especially because of Escape Artist. And then work your way up to having better gear. For flasks, prismatic tincture with attack speed suffix. LE pen will be more damage in POB, but I think attack speed is actually way better because having high attacks per second is really important because it will help you ramp up your charges faster, and your damage doesn't really fully come online until you have all your frenzy and power charges up. And it'll also give you more invert res and double damage procs, which is how you're going to hit really high shocks, and that will just continue to ramp your damage up faster and harder. So go for attack speed, prismatic tincture. And then for the rest of the flasks, stibnite or jade, and silver and diamond. And then your suffixes you want is evasion and crit. And then the third one, you can go for avoid stun if you have stun avoid tattoos. So I have stun immunity because I have 5 avoid stun tattoos right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then with the flask suffix for avoid stun, I'm immune to stun with the flask up, which feels great for mapping. But if you don't have those tattoos, you can just use shock reduction or curse reduction instead for that third suffix. If you have a bottled faith, you can use a bottled faith instead of the crit flask, and that's extremely strong. Jade and Stibnite flasks are very close to the same in terms of evasion that they give you. Jade is typically better early until you get really good armor defenses on your gear, and then once you have really good gear, the Stibnite one outscales it. The Stibnite one also lasts a little longer, so I prefer it for that reason. Pantheons. If you don't have ailment immunity, then you have to use Brine King for freeze immunity. If you do have ailment immunity, then use Solaris. And then for the minor, I swap between the shock one, the curse one, and the burning ground one, depending on what I'm doing. All three of those are good. You can also use the life flask one if you're bossing. There's a lot of flexibility with the Pantheons here. Here's all the defensive layers the build has. Fortify, which you get from the chest implicit. Endurance charges from Enduring Cry. Flesh and Stone is like having a second Fortify. If you're close to if you're within the aura, the sand stance, make sure you stay in sand stance. That's the only benefit this thing gives. If you're in blood stance, it's doing nothing. 100% suppression with 66% less damage taken from spells because of Spellbreaker. Spellbreaker gives you a 50% chance to start your recharge whenever you take a spell hit, basically. We have 85% plus chance to evade. I have 87% chance to evade on my setup. Your guard skill of choice, Steel Skin or Mortal Call. Stun immunity with the flask up, like I said. Ailment immune if you can get yourself a Storm Shroud or Ancestral Vision. I had a Storm Shroud on my first character, but I died with it, and so now I don't have one, unfortunately, so I don't have ailment immunity. But it hasn't really been a big problem. Ignites don't really hurt you because you have so much recovery, and Shock you can use the Pantheon for, or a Flask for, or you can just kind of deal with it. It's up to you. High recovery because of Instant Leech and Polymath while mapping. You have screen-wide freeze, and you can get up to 10k plus HP pool, which is really, really nice. I have like 14k HP with my gear. So for ailments, early in the campaign, you're going to take one step ahead first for freeze and chill immunity, easy while you're leveling. And then as soon as you get access to the Brine King Pantheon and the Betrayal Cannot Be Chilled Bootcraft, I recommend that you get rid of one step ahead. I don't think one step ahead is particularly good on a chill and freezing build like Frostblades. So get rid of it and take Polymath or Swift Killer, whichever one you don't take first. And then you can use the Shock Reduction Flask and the Pantheon to deal with Shock. Ignites aren't really a big problem. And then if you get yourself a Storm Shroud, you can use Torment Essences and get Avoid Shock and Avoid Ailments on your boot implicits, and you can get 100% ailment immune just from your boots. That's what I had before on my last character. And then if you get Ancestral Vision, you do the same thing, except you use Loathing Essences and Avoid Ailments, and you'll be ailment immune just from the boots, as long as you have Suppress Cap. Accuracy capping. So the best way to accuracy cap is with one tier 1 suffix, which has to be on the glove or the helmet, and it needs to be divined well, like 550 plus. And then you need to have the attack speed accuracy wheel with a close range mastery. So this one right here. This is the best one of these masteries. Make sure you have that one. And then you need to have blind, which you can get from a tattoo. I have one blind tattoo right here. If you don't have a blind tattoo, which these are kind of rare, it might take you a while to get one from your shipments. You can use a blind Abyss Jewel, which I actually have another one over here that has blind on it. You can try to get one that's 5% blind if you can, because having 3% blind is like kind of unreliable, but 5% is okay. And then one accuracy roll on the Abyss Jewel, which mine needed to be like around 200 or more. And that's with like a perfect 600 accuracy on my helmet. So do it in POB for yourself, see exactly how much accuracy you need, but this is enough to hit cap you. You can also use precision to make up a little bit of accuracy, but I don't use that. And any more than that is a waste. That's all you need to hit cap. I don't recommend hits can't be evaded because your weapon prefixes give you way too much damage to give them up, and accuracy capping is not that difficult. This is all you need to do it. A note about dexterity. Dexterity does give you accuracy, so if you are tattooing away all your dexterity, that will affect your accuracy number. So make sure you're careful about how much dexterity you have and how much accuracy you're getting from it when you're using tattoos. Here's some important milestones for the build. When you get a 5-link is when you want to add in Nightblade and all the elusive nodes. When you get a 6-link, I added in Energy Leech. Before I had Energy Leech and a 6-link, I was using Soul Drinker. And then I swapped to Spellbreaker once I had the Energy Leech 6-link, because I was using Soul Drinker for the ES Leech primarily. The Overleech I didn't find to be too impactful, and when I dropped it, I didn't miss it at all. So I recommend Spellbreaker over Soul Drinker. Get a Lethal Pride as fast as you can. A Rage on hit is the most important node on it. Anything else you can get is just a bonus. Double damage, crit chance, multi, melee damage, fire res, which I'm using, max fortification, crit reduction, all that stuff is good. But prioritize Rage on hit, definitely. Getting accuracy on your gear. So when you first level, you're not going to have accuracy on your gear. You need to take the crit accuracy wheel as well to accuracy cap it first. This wheel right here. And then once you get accuracy on your gear, you can drop this wheel. So that's kind of a big milestone, is getting your accuracy fixed. Getting a taming with high resist roll as possible. You can farm the taming with barracks rings. Well, you can't really target farm it, but you can target farm the respite, which is the hardest one to get, with the Spark and the Flame div card, which drops in Atoll and Plateau. So try to farm those maps to get the respite if that's what you need to get yourself the taming. Get a blind on hit tattoo, so just spam Karui shipments in King's March until you can get one. If you can't get one, then use the jewel for it. Get the stun avoid tattoos, same thing for King's March. These ones are a little more common than the blind ones, so you should get them relatively easily. Get your Eldritch Implicits taken care of. Fortify and Additional Strike are the two most important ones. Get Fortify on the chest, get Strike on the gloves. Get Chaos Res added on as fast as possible. This is very, very important. Try to get Fury Valve. I mean, you can't really target farm Fury Valve. Well, actually, that's not true. You can target farm a Fury Valve with the Metamorph item div card. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there is a Metamorph item div card that you can get a Fury Valve from. But if you get one, it's a big improvement for mapping. And then the final sort of last milestone, the most late game milestone, is the +2 strikes on the gloves and then switching to a cluster jewel. And you kind of need both of those things together in order to pull off the cluster jewel, because if you don't have the +2 strikes, I don't recommend playing with only +1 strike. I think +2 is very important. Then you're not going to be able to drop this wheel, and you're not going to have enough points to put the cluster jewel on. So that's a very late game milestone if you can get there. For leveling, I leveled with Frostblades the entire time. I have done it a lot of times, so it feels pretty comfortable for me. It might not feel comfortable for you. If you want to level with something else, that's totally fine, and switch to Frostblades later, especially for the first couple acts, because the hardest part of the campaign is Act 1 and Act 2. Once you get to Act 3 and 4, and you get a 4-link, and you get Trinity online, it's a breeze after that, in my opinion. So get Wrath and Trinity online as fast as possible, as soon as you get them, and then prioritize lightning damage on your claw and your gear. Your first 4-link should probably be Frostblades, Trinity, and Fortify support with Ellie damage, and then once you get multi-strike, swap in multi-strike. That will give you Fortify early, which will help you stay alive. And prioritize claw upgrades. Pick up claw bases, buy them from the vendors, use your alchemy orbs and your essences on them. Try to get one with as much damage as you can early. And then use elemental weakness in Act 3 before you swap to crit, and this will help you kill bosses in the campaign. And then once you switch to crit later, you're going to switch to Assassin's Mark. Trinity and Heat Shiver, and try Ellie. So this build does use Trinity, but you only need 2 damage types to use Trinity, not 3. I happen to have a triple Ellie Claw, which is really good, but you only need Cold and Lightning from Wrath to use Trinity, and this is true even in the campaign. So the fire damage is just a bonus, but you do need to have some fire damage so that you can ignite for the taming. So this is a non-Heat Shiver build. Heat Shiver is too weak defensively because Escape Artist is too powerful and you get too much energy shield and evasion from the helmet. I don't recommend Heat Shiver. So because it's not a Heat Shiver build, it's not good to go pure Fizz and Cold because you can't scale that Fizz and Cold damage with Heat Shiver. So you don't need to go 100% conversion. You don't need a pure Fizz Claw. So go for the Try Ellie Claw. It's better. And yeah, I guess that's about all I need to say on that. There's a video in the description I made about Trinity explaining more detailed about how Trinity works, when and why you should use it. That video is about Warden, but you might still learn something from it if you don't understand Trinity. Resistances on my setup are extremely tight. you have to have tier 1 or maybe tier 2 resists like everywhere. Otherwise, you're going to have to use extra suffixes. So this is how you min-max the build, basically, is you get your basics done, and then as you get better gear and you get tier 1 resist rolls, then you can replace your crappy resist rolls with damage, with attack speed, with double damage on the shield, with suppression, with your ailment immunity if you have it, and with int. You replace all those things with int, attack speed, damage, etc. So min-max the resistances. That's very, very important. You can use a cluster jewel with resistances instead of attributes if you hit one. The cluster jewel can be very hard to craft. And then you can also use fire resist from the Lethopride to help, which is what I'm doing actually. I'm relying on my fire res from my Lethopride to resist cap. VLS, I talked about this earlier. It's a very helpful tool to generate your rage quickly and keep up your rage if you have the rage on hit Lethopride, and get your charges up quickly. This replaced the ancestral totems that we had before, basically, for me. So it's easier setup. It's a one button. You don't have to worry about it dying, and it just gives you that damage boost that the totems basically used to give you. So alternatives, if you don't want to use VLS, Frost Shield, you can use a Golem. You can use Precision Enlighten, maybe, if you want to change the tree a little bit. You can use Vol Arctic Armor, or whatever other gems you might want to use. Lightning Strike for single target, okay, is significantly better than Frostblades for 3 main reasons. It can double hit the melee and the projectile if you have additional strike. You can hit the ground in front of you, and then the projectile will hit the boss, and then your additional strike will melee hit the boss, so you get double hits from that. It has a Vol version, which is incredibly powerful, and the Lightning Strike gem just has better damage effectiveness scaling than Frostblades does. So if you want to use Lightning Strike for bossing, it's a significantly better single target skill. And you can freely swap it in and out with the same gem links, and it's totally fine. You don't have to change anything. Frostblades is significantly better than mapping, though, in my opinion, than Lightning Strike, because it has a much larger strike range, which lets you hit stuff and clear the screen much, much easier. It has faster projectiles and more of them, and it has a better attack animation. So I think Frostblades is far and above better for mapping. So TLDR, use Lightning Strike for bossing if you want to. Endurance charges will come from Enduring Cry. They're up for 30 seconds with Swift Killer, so you don't have to press the button very often. Use it next to uniques and rares. Keep your charges up. You can also use the Exarch Chest Implicit to generate your endurance charge every 15 seconds. Those will guarantee them up all the time, but you do have to sacrifice damage from that, because then you won't be able to use the crit multi chest roll. This will give you some gems back, though, if you have some gems that you want to use instead. Additional strikes and pierce. These are critically important for offense and defense, because this is how you AoE freeze the entire screen, and this is how nothing will ever be able to hit you. So you get +1 from the tree early, get another +1 from the glove implicit as soon as you can, and then late game, once you have the Orb of Conflicts, you go for the +2 on the gloves, and then you can drop the points on the tree. Pierce, you can craft it first on a prefix for glove or helmet. This comes from Betrayal. You should get it pretty early when you farm Betrayal. And then once you can get it on the Eater glove implicit, you can drop that craft. But I recommend you have at least 1 pierce and 2 strikes to feel really, really good. Fury Valve is insanely strong for mapping. I talked about this already. The splits from Fury Valve will chain off screen, basically, and you will be clearing packs that aren't even on the screen. It's insanely powerful. I talked about this already, but make sure you ration your suffixes so that you're not relying on Fury Valve's resists or attributes, so that if you freely swap it in and out, you don't brick your build. So keep that in mind. Crit capping and Brittle. I don't use Brittle on this build. Brittle is an extremely powerful way to crit cap, but it also adds another layer of gameplay that you have to think about. You have to be careful and frequently reposition. Phone's ringing again. And this is going to distract you, and it's going to expose you to more risk. And I don't think it's worth it, because you can crit cap pretty easily without Brittle. And so, also, if you have Storm Shroud, you're going to need that Brittle Exarch implicit to get Avoid Shock. So you can use Action Speed instead of Brittle. I'm sorry about the phone ringing. But Action Speed is a very strong replacement. Don't recommend Brittle. Don't use it, basically. TLDR. You don't need it. CI. People have asked me very, very often, what about CI? Why don't you CI? CI is very powerful, but it doesn't just instantly make your character better. You can't just take it willy-nilly. You have to redo the entire build to go CI, basically. CI is better suited for non-crit builds that can use Ephemeral Edge, which I'm not going to be able to use Ephemeral Edge because this is a Claw crit Nightblade build. And so I don't recommend it, but it is an option. You need to POB it first and proceed with caution. I'm not using CI. Katabasis. Frostblades of Katabasis scales exactly the same as regular Frostblades for damage. It just doesn't have projectiles. But instead of having projectiles, it has like a screen-wide strike range instead. So because it doesn't have projectiles, you need to have melee splash for it to clear, which if you're on Trickster, you're going to be able to get it only by anointing the Tribal Fury node, basically. So the reason I don't use this is because the close range accuracy mastery is how I'm accuracy capping, and that basically nullifies the advantage of Katabasis, which is the additional strike range. And then the lack of projectiles also means you can't use Fury Valve, and Fury Valve is just S tier insane for mapping. So because of those main reasons, I don't use Katabasis. I don't recommend it. If you want to use Katabasis, probably go Slayer, because then you'll be close to Tribal Fury and you won't have to make those sacrifices. There's notes in the POB. Basically, I put in there a lot of the stuff that I covered in the video. So you can refer to this if you have questions about some of the stuff that I talked about. You can find some of the answers there. And the POB will be down in the description. I think that's it. I might have forgot to cover some stuff, but I did the best I can, and I wanted to get this video out because people have been asking me a lot for it. Thank you very much for watching. Click on the subscribe button. Follow the stream at twitch.tv/ZishPoE. And see you next time. Have a good one.